I thought I would make the window frames. I'm like, how hard can it be? How hard can carpentry be? Well, let's just say there was lots of swearing. There was lots of throwing pieces of wood around. There were tears. And in the end, I'm just like, carpenting is an art, and those people are geniuses.
I'm joined again by my co-hosts Nigel and Sue from Nigel and Sue Adventures, and we are excited today to continue the van life conversation, how to build out your van. And today we're talking about tools and materials you need. And so we're going to talk with Nigel and Sue and get just a wealth of information since they've done a full van build for themselves. Hi guys. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi Nicole. Hi folks.
Hi everyone.
Awesome. I love talking about tools.
Tools.
I'll just leave.
Who doesn't like tools, right?
Right. Well, what are the essential materials you need for your van build?
Well, gosh, that's such an open-ended question, isn't it? And it's probably only limited by your imagination in a way, and your budget. So, in terms of materials, we've heard of builds that have been done really on the budget, and Sue and I have looked at each other and gone, "Wow, how the hell did they build a van with only that?" So that's the first consideration, how much money you've got.
Right.
So we've talked about the design in a previous podcast, and then, okay, how much can we afford?
You might have to change your design.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I'm looking up at the Max Air fans of which we have two. They're expensive. What are they, $700 each?
450 Australian dollars, yeah.
Okay.
Each, yeah.
So
that's about 300 US. That's here in Australia. If you buy them in the US, they're probably only 200, but everything's more expensive in Australia.
Yeah, so without going, we could go into in great depth on that. So, and everyone's got, different budgets. And then in terms of raw materials, you go to Lowe's or you go to Home Depot, and generally they've got what you need. If not, there'll be various specialists like marine depots, places like that.
Right.
The flooring, you might have, certain flooring that you want, marine grade, for example.
Right.
But I think in terms of the materials, materials and appliances, if you start from the walls and work inwards, you've got sound deadening, insulation, and then something to line the walls. So we used panels. A lot of people use shiplap planks. Or you've got a frame and then put the lining on. And then your appliances like your fridge and your stove and your lights and your taps and your water pipes, your electrical wiring. Yeah, sorry, that electrical wiring went a lot earlier before you put the walls on, because that's obviously all behind the walls. Yeah, your electrical appliances, your bed, so your bed frame. And a lot of people will do a lot of their framing with wood. But again, you've got a weight consideration there. So people are moving more towards, I think it's called 18-20 or 80-20 aluminum. Sorry, we call it aluminium. Okay. But aluminum struts for their framing to keep the build lighter.
And also save space because it's strong and it saves a lot of valuable space.
Yeah, so there, I guess that's a bit of a list of the basic materials that you need. Something to cover the floor, something to put on the ceiling, paint. There's a lot of things there. Yeah,
I hadn't thought about sound deadening material. What did you use for that?
So it's a specific material called sound deadener, and it's like a thick, it's self-adhesive. It's like a kind of
almost like tar.
It's nasty. It's black
it's hard
and
stuff
sticky.
to work with.
Yeah. And you cut it, and then there's a peeling. So we bought it on a roll, but you can buy it on sheets. And it's interesting. Cool. And you see in every van build video, people will put the piece of sound deadening on one panel and knock on it, and then go and knock on a panel without the sound deadening, and it just removes that echo.
That's crazy. That's really cool. I didn't know this.
Think of a sheet of metal and you wobble it. Makes a lot of noise, and if you stuck a thick layer on top of that, you wouldn't get that noise. So it does help. Now I was just thinking, guys, the thing to consider for people living in those colder environments, like parts of America gets very cold, right? So you have to consider the insulation. And we've seen builds where they put the foam, basically wrap the interior of the van with a nice thick layer of foam.
Foam insulation, like a spray foam that sets.
Oh, okay.
So that's something to consider because, you guys are going to have to deal with much colder environments and it'd be miserable in a van without that insulation. So
my goal is to drive to Florida in the winter.
Yeah. Well, that was always
exactly.
That was always our plan in Australia, to be in the north, which is obviously we're in the southern hemisphere, so it's flipped. You go north for winter and south for summer. And then, of course, we've spent this last winter in the south, in the coldest part of Australia, where it's not that cold, doesn't quite get to freezing.
We don't get minus temperatures like you guys get.
Yeah, but it was cold enough to need to be running our heater. So we have a diesel heater in the van, which kind of keeps us warm.
So do you guys have any tips for finding good materials on a budget? Like, did you buy anything used, or did you kind of go with all new materials? What was that for you?
We went with all new. We had a budget, but it was quite a generous budget. So as I think we've talked about in a previous episode, we built our van during the pandemic, during all the lockdowns, and we kind of did it as a bit of an investment. So we had been saving money and planning for a big trip, which obviously got postponed. So we took that money and invested it into the van and into the build, thinking that at some point in the future, we didn't realize it would be this far in the future, we'd be selling it and recouping that money and maybe even making a bit of a profit. So, we didn't want to kind of cut too many corners and go budget. Our electrical system, for example, cost us about $8,000. So it's, it's really good quality. But 3 years in, and touch wood, we've never had a problem with it. But I think if people do want to do stuff on a budget, I've seen people use like recycled wood. So their entire build is done with recycled materials. Or they've gone, some of the 12-volt fridges, like our fridge is only really small, and it was about $1,500, but which is a lot of money for a small fridge. You can get a much cheaper brand, So there's always ways that you can save, but a lot of the stuff that you put into a van is obviously 12 volt, and a lot of it comes from the marine industry, which is notoriously expensive. So
I'm just thinking of the toilet. I mean, the toilet itself, the composting toilet, was $2,000.
We call it the $2,000 throne.
I love it. Do you guys do you like the composting toilet, by the way? Has that been good for you?
Wouldn't swap it for the world, but geez, did I balk at having to get the checkbook out for that?
Yeah.
And the stupid thing was, I was still going out digging a hole.
Right.
And I thought, hang on a minute, I paid $2,000 for the damn thing. I might as well use it. But, insane. But so there's definitely ways to save money there, clearly, instead of spending $2,000.
There are a lot, when we bought that almost 4 years ago, there were really only a couple of brands on the market, the Nature's Head and the Airhead, which we went with the Airhead. But now there's like half a dozen different brands, and they've really come down in price. As van life has become more popular, but not just van life, but tiny home living. People are building these off-grid tiny homes and putting composting toilets in there. And that's something that we've talked about for far in the future. It's a perfect, like, rather than having to dig a big septic tank and just nasty. Yeah, it's like,
it's brilliant. It's so effective.
And when we pull up at the dump points and see people emptying those disgusting cassettes, never.
Right. Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah. And of course, all the vans we're looking at in Europe have got the cassette toilets. We haven't seen one with a composting toilet yet.
That's coming straight out. Straight out.
Yeah, gone. I ain't do that thing.
Yeah. Right. Well, what tools do you need to do the work? I mean, there are probably some that are obvious, but Nigel, tell us about the tools.
Oh, look, I don't have a complete, tool sheet,
top to bottom list. Yeah.
No, there's definitely stuff there that I would love. So in terms of the basics, battery powered drill, obviously hand saws and screwdrivers and hammers and
jigsaw to cut holes in the van.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's right. We've got like a library of hole saws because you're forever drilling holes in the van. I've heard of people buying, or even buying a second-hand van. It's very nerve-wracking when you're drilling a hole in the panel of your van.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, but those drill bits. Gosh, the amount of drill bits we went through. You don't need
paint brushes.
You don't need an extensive range. I think to be perfectly honest, and I'm not trying to float my boat here, you just have to have a love or a passion for working with your hands and a bit of an idea with working with tools. And look, if you don't have the tool in your workshop that you need, just go buy it. It's a good excuse. We had this bit of a joke, I'd say to Sue, we've got this job coming up in the van. I don't have the right tool here. You're going to have to go and buy that one.
But it is tricky if you don't have tools to begin with. I mean, there's ways around it. Here in Australia, we've got what's called the men's shed, which is like a little community-based shed in a lot of suburbs and towns, and you can go there, or tool libraries or hiring tools and that sort of thing. So, there's always around it, begging, borrowing from your friends, or in our case, buying. Nigel doesn't need much of an excuse to buy another tool. So, and now, of course, we're going to move to the other side of the world where we'll have none, and it's going to be really tricky. So,
I can imagine. Like, I heard you say tool library, and that's something I remember the folks from Our Rich Journey talking about when they were renovating some houses, and I had never heard of that. I was like, wait, there's like where you can borrow certain tools for different projects. I thought that was so cool. Just that there are communities of people that are willing to do this. I think probably used tools are okay to buy too, depending on what it is and making sure that they work properly. But I think you could probably get them at a much better price buying them used over buying them new, just depending on what you need.
Well, exactly. That's it. I mean, a drill's a drill, but it doesn't work unless you've got the drill bits. So, that's the thing. Oh, I need a drill bit that's this size. So,
getting into the real specifics of different little things that you need. Yeah. Well, do you think it is easy enough for the average person to learn each skill, or is it better for some projects to be outsourced or contracted?
Yeah, good question.
I'll jump in because I know you want to talk about this, my little dummies bit. I thought I would make the window frames. I'm like, how hard can it be? How hard can carpentry be? Well, let's just say there was lots of swearing. There was lots of throwing pieces of wood around. There were tears. And in the end, I'm just like, carpenting is an art, and those people are geniuses. So I'm creative.
You call me a genius for getting those window frames.
You are a genius.
It's like right, you do it.
I'm creative, and I like to think I'm handy. Like my ex-husband couldn't hammer a nail into a wall, and I had to do things like that around the house. Right. So I can do basic stuff. I'm really good with the paintbrush, and I did the resin on the kitchen bench and this bench here. But, but there are certain things that were beyond my capacity. Sure. Fortunately, Nigel is really handy, but I've seen girls, and it's not just because I'm a girl. I know girls that have built their entire van themselves,
like 100%. Yeah.
My friend Emily did hers herself. The van wives did theirs themselves. So, it's not just being a girl.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that you do need a professional for, and it's really important depending on where you are in the world. So in Queensland, Australia, we can't legally do our own 240 electric or hook up our own gas propane. So we had to get a licensed electrician to do that and a licensed gas fitter to do the gas. So
we certainly know of builds that have been done without said certification, and then you run the risk of when it comes down the track to sell it. Or if you had it, God forbid, you had a bingle, an accident and something happened, then your insurance is null and void. So you got to consider that. So you're trying to cut costs, but then at the end of the day, you might actually cause yourself a real headache. So we did it probably 90 to 95% of it ourselves, but essentially those two items. Yeah, we had to outsource.
I do feel pretty strongly that everyone has the ability to learn different things. And the thing that I love to learn, and I feel like a lot of people have a fear of what they don't know. I feel this way about working under the hood of a car. I was so proud of maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I needed something done in my car, and I watched a full YouTube video on it. That's another great thing about YouTube University, right? There's just like so much information.
The
and
University of YouTube.
Yeah, I watched this whole video and they said, this is the kit you need to order. And it took me 45 minutes. I changed, I forget the thing. It was like the spark plugs and the thing under the spark plugs. So I changed all those on my car myself. 45 minutes later, it was running. And I just was so proud because I always felt like everyone treated me like I shouldn't be able to do that for some reason. And somehow we let those fears get into our head, and it doesn't need to be that way. However, in learning certain things, like when you were talking about carpentry, there are certain things that take a bit more patience and have a bit more of a learning curve if you really want to do them. And sometimes I go, I don't really want to do that, and so like, I don't really care if it's me that does that. And I'll leave that skill to someone who has the patience to do it really well. But I do want to encourage people that it might take a few times. You might have to cut 3 pieces of board when you really only needed one because you don't get it quite right. And that's okay. But I think it's an important thing to tell everyone you can do whatever you want to do. So
absolutely.
We love this topic because we love hearing stories of people that have gone beyond their fears, as you just mentioned, Nicole, and achieved, and the rewards are so boundless. It's such a cool thing to. Well, we're in here and we go, you know what? It's so cool. We built this. And we get into gratitude, and so it's very rewarding. So we would encourage people out there to have a go. Fear, man, that's just false evidence appearing real. We tell ourselves these stories, right? And every excuse not to do it. But just got to tell yourself, we're no different to anyone else. If we can do it, you can do it.
That's right.
And just, use the University of YouTube. There's a wealth of information there, and it's amazing what we can actually achieve just following the steps that other people have had the goodness to put out there on YouTube, so that you and I can get the benefit. It's great. Such a great resource.
And while carpentry was not my strong point and probably never will be, there were little projects that Nigel let me do in the van, or just kind of said, oh yeah, you work on that. And probably my proudest moment too was we wired up lights and we've got a switch at the front of the van and a switch at the bed. So it was quite complicated, and this is 12 volts, so we could do that. But wiring the lights, and there's a series of 3 down lights down the center of the ceiling with 2 switches, so we don't have to get out of bed to switch them off.
Oh, nice.
And I managed to do that.
Use my big toe instead.
Yeah. And then at the time that we flicked the switch and went and flicked it on with the other, those little achievements, it's like, man, I never thought I would be doing something like wiring up lighting. It's
cool.
Very cool. Yeah.
Wow. Well, this is an inspiring way to end this video, folks. You can do anything that you put your mind to.
Absolutely.
And then if you have questions about this topic and about tools and materials, put them in the comments, and we'll ask Nigel and Sue to answer them, because I might not know, but I'll try to help you too. We'll all jump on there and help. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear if there are topics you'd like for us to talk about, whether about van life or other world travel things. We will be here every week, and we love hearing from you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Nigel and Sue. Go follow them at Nigel and Sue Adventures on YouTube, Instagram. Where else are you? Anywhere else they can find you?
Facebook and the World Wide Web.
Awesome. We love it. Well, thanks so much, everyone. As always, I can't wait to see where your dreams will take you.